I woke up that morning to the sound of boots, government boots, trucks rumbling down the dirt path. Not just one or two, a fleet. My ranch, handed down from my grandfather, was 15,000 acres of open sky, cattle, and sweat-soaked dreams. It had survived droughts, floods, and corporate vultures. But it wouldn't survive this. I ran outside in my flannel shirt and boots still muddy from yesterday's work. There were men in suits. Clipboards, sunglasses, not a single one looked me in the eye. Mr. Cole, a man with a blue HOA badge, said, "You're trespassing on managed land. You need to vacate immediately," I laughed. "This is my land. Been in my family since 1884. He didn't laugh back. Instead, he handed me a legal notice. It read, "This property now falls under jurisdiction of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. Due to non-compliance with the community bylaws, your land has been seized." Seized, like it was some forgotten shopping cart at Walmart. I felt my stomach twist. "Y'all lost your minds?" I asked, trying to process what I was reading, but they weren't here to talk. They started boarding up my barn, chaining off my livestock pens. Even my water wells were padlocked. My land was being stolen right in front of my eyes. I called the sheriff. I called my lawyer. I even called the news. Nobody helped. The sheriff said, "HOAs operate under private contracts. Ain't much I can do." My lawyer said, "It'll take years to untangle this. Maybe decades." And the news? They said it wasn't sensational enough. You want to know what was sensational? That it show a president? Karen Whitmore. Picture a woman in her mid-50s with a permanent scowl and lipstick so red it could stop traffic. She strutted around like she was Queen of Texas. "You were warned," she told me, arms crossed, standing at the edge of my now stolen land. "Your failure to adhere to our land integration policies voided your ownership." Land integration policies? I never signed up for any HOA. I lived 10 miles outside of town. Turns out they'd redrawn zoning maps quietly, sneakily pulled some political strings to get my ranch classified as future community development. No one told me. No one asked me. They just took over. The next week it got worse. They kicked me out of my own home, bulldozed my father's workshop, paved over my grandmother's garden to build tennis courts. They even posted a video of Karen cutting the ceremonial ribbon for the new community. With my barn in the background still standing like a ghost behind her, I sat in a cheap motel room on the edge of town, watching it all unfold. 15,000 acres. Gone, just like that. I'll admit it, I broke down. I cried for my family. For my father, who died trying to keep the ranch alive. For my mother, who grew every tomato on that soil with her bare hands. For myself, but I didn't cry long, because somewhere in that darkness, a fire lit inside me. They wanted to steal my land and my legacy. Fine. Then I'd steal something bigger. Their comfort. Their homes. Their power. And by God, I was going to make them regret the day they ever came after Jackson Cole. The first thing I did was disappear. Not literally. I was still around, still watching, but to them, Jackson Cole was a broken man, living in a $59 a motel with a broken truck and an eviction notice. I played the part perfectly. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was building an army. You see, most folks think HOAs are powerful. Truth is, they're just bullies hiding behind paper shields. Legal jargon, fine print, bylaws no one reads. But when you know the system, when you know how money moves, you realize something terrifying. Most of these HOA people don't actually own the land beneath their homes. They lease it. Or their HOA owns it. Or it's tied up in defaulted loans and bundled into messy real estate trusts. So I made my move. I found a shell company in Nevada. Set up a silent holding firm in Wyoming. Then used a friend from Austin to pose as a developer. We started buying everything, vacant lots, foreclosed homes, abandoned units. Even the maintenance compound where the HOA stored its equipment. All of it. Ours. We didn't buy under Jackson Cole. We bought under Sun River Enterprises, LLC. To them, I was just another rich guy with too much time and money. Every deal was clean. Every signature legal. Every move quiet. Within 6 months, I owned 47% of the land inside Willow Ridge, and not one of them knew. Walked the streets of the neighborhood one afternoon in disguise, khakis, sunglasses, clean shave. Nobody looked. Twice, I stood outside Karen Whitmore's house as she watered her roses. Her home was pretty. Manicured yard, white pillars, American flag blowing in the breeze. It sat on a parcel of land that I now owned. She didn't know it yet, but the ground under her feet? Mine. The next target was the community center. The pride of Willow Ridge. Pool, gym, tennis courts. They'd built it right on what used to be my ranch's north pasture. They'd never actually finished paying the land lease when they built it, and guess who tracked down the debt note? Me. I bought it at auction for pennies, because they forgot to renew it during their land expansion scam. Now, I held the deed, and one letter from my attorney, sent with a smile, shut it down, closed for violation of land. Use agreement. Panic set in immediately. The board scrambled. Emergency meetings. Confused residents knocking on doors. Karen tried to flex. Posted on the neighborhood forum. Don't worry, we're handling this. Just a legal technicality? But she was sweating. I knew it, because I had moles now. People inside the neighborhood started whispering. They hated the HOA too. High fees, fines for mailbox colors, threats for leaving trash cans out, and they started coming to me. One couple said, "We'll sell. Just make us a fair offer." I did. Another man said, "They fined me $800 because my son's basketball hoop was visible from the road. I'm done." I bought his house for cash. Within 10 months, I controlled nearly 63% of the entire neighborhood. And then I called a vote. See, in most HOAs, once you control the majority land interest, you can force changes to leadership, including total dissolution of the HOA itself the day of the vote. I walked into the OA meeting with boots on my feet, a black Stetson on my head, and paperwork in my hands. Karen's face went white when she saw me. "Jackson?" she whispered. "I believe you remember me," I said. Laying down the ownership records and vote tallies, the room fell silent. And then I said the words she never thought she'd hear, effective immediately. "Willow Ridge HOA is dissolved, and you're trespassing." I sent the notice at exactly 8 a.m. certified mail. Signature required. It read, "Due to breach of land use terms and dissolution of HOA structure, occupancy is no longer legally permitted. You are hereby ordered to vacate the premises within 30 days. This property is now under private reclamation by the rightful landowner. Jackson R. Cole, landowner and executor, Sun River Holdings No Law Firm. No middleman. Just me. It was poetic. I knew Karen wouldn't go quietly. She stormed into the county clerk's office, screaming about fraud and extortion, but they just shrugged. The records were legit. The votes had been filed. It was dissolved. And I had every deed, every title, every right. She even tried to file a restraining order against me. Didn't stick, turns out. Judges don't take kindly to people who steal 15,000 acres from a veteran landowner using forged annexation paperwork, too. Weeks later, I pulled up to her house. Big white columns, immaculate hedges. No trespassing sign nailed to the gate like it meant something, but now? The trespasser was her. I stepped out of my truck wearing my old ranch coat and worn-out boots. A sheriff's deputy followed behind me with a clipboard and a body cam. Karen came to the porch, red-faced and trembling. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "No," I said flatly. "I think it's fair." She launched into one of her monologues. "You can't just undo a community. People have built lives here, families. This isn't about land, this is about control. You're just bitter because you lost." I stepped forward, close enough she could see the sun-worn lines on my face. "I didn't lose, Karen," I said quietly. "You did, when you stole what wasn't yours. When you buried my grandmother's garden under your community pool. When you turned my great-grandfather's fields into your tennis courts, you didn't just steal land, you stole legacy." Then the deputy handed her the final notice. She had 72 hours. After that, the locks would change. Utilities would shut off. Security would escort her off the property if needed. She stood there, stunned, shaking. "You'll regret this," she muttered. "I just tipped my hat, already did. Back when I watched you bulldoze my barn for a dog park." But it wasn't just Karen. Over the next week, I sent 67 eviction notices. Some people left quietly. Some cried. Some cursed me. One old man hugged me, said, "Thank you." And that woman fined me $400 for painting my shed green. Another woman told me Karen banned wind chimes because they were too cheerful. I let her stay rent-free for a month. Not everyone deserved what Karen had coming. And then the final day came. Karen stood in the middle of her now empty house. No furniture, no curtains, no power. I walked in with the locksmith and 2 deputies. She was still holding on to one last photo of her family, standing in front of my barn. She looked at me, broken but defiant. "You may own this land," she said, "but you'll never be welcome here." I looked around at the house I now owned. The house built on my stolen soil. Then I leaned in and whispered, "I don't need to be welcome. I just need you gone." They stole my land, and I took theirs. Piece by piece, quietly, legally, mercilessly, I watched Karen Whitmore, the woman who once laughed as my ranch was bulldozed, walk out of my property with a suitcase and a bitter heart. But this story? It wasn't about revenge anymore. Now it was about restoration. Because once I had their land, it was time to build something better. Part 4. The master plan revealed. I stood at the edge of the ridge that overlooked the land I once called home. The air smelled different now, free. No HOA signs, no threats. No plastic smiles, just open sky. And a future finally in my hands, but I wasn't interested in just reclaiming the past. I had a vision. Sun River Legacy Project, that's what I called it. It wasn't a development. It was a resurrection. The master plan was simple, but powerful. Rebuild the original Coal Ranch house, exactly how my grandfather built it. Same wood, same porch swing, same red tin roof. Turn the rest of the neighborhood into a self-sustaining community. No HOAs, no politics, no fines, no power-hungry Karens. Create veteran housing on the eastern hills, quiet, dignified, debt-free places for those who served, who'd been cast aside by a system that forgot them. Restore the farmland, but this time turn it into a community co-op. Locals could farm it, sell from it, live off it. This land used to feed families. Now it would feed dreams. I called in the same construction crew Karen once hired to pave over my horse paddocks. They remembered me. "You serious?" one of them asked, staring at the blueprints. "Dead serious," I said. "And you're gonna get paid double what she gave you." Within a week, the bulldozers that once tore my land apart were now rebuilding it. Of course, news got out. The local paper ran the headline, "Man reclaims land from HOA, builds Freedom Village on former development." TV crews came. Reporters wanted sound bites. I gave them one. They took what belonged to generations. So I bought it back, not for revenge, for restoration. It went viral. They called me the rancher who beat the HOA. But I didn't care about fame. I cared about legacy. And then, one day, as the new barn beams were going up, I saw a familiar car pull up. Black Lexus, tires crunching slow over gravel. Karen. Her hair was tied back. She didn't look like a queen anymore, more like a woman who'd lost everything she thought. She controlled. She got out. No anger, no threats. Just silence. She stood by the fence, watching for a moment. I almost didn't say anything, but then I walked over, slow and calm. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She looked down at the dirt and whispered, "I wanted to see what you built." For a moment, we just stood there. Me, the man who had lost everything, now standing on the ashes of a ruined HOA empire. Her, the woman who took it all. Now a ghost on the land she once ruled. "You could have done this with us," she said softly. I looked her dead in the eye. "You didn't want me, Karen. You wanted my land. You didn't build a community, you built a cage, and now I'm setting it free." She nodded once, got back in the car, and left without another word. That night I stood on the porch of my newly rebuilt ranch house. Wind in the trees, stars overhead, and for the first time in years, Peace, but even as the land healed, there was one thing left to do. One last message to send to every other HOA. Every corrupt board, every land thief that thought they could bury a legacy in contracts and concrete, you can't destroy history if you're not ready to face the man who remembers every inch of it. They stole my land. 15,000 acres of my family's blood and history gone under the weight of HOA greed, but I fought back. I took everything from them, quietly, legally, and without mercy. I rebuilt what they tore down. I gave the land back to the people. Now, it was time to make sure this never happened again, and that meant taking the fight all the way to the Capitol. Part 5. The Legacy Law, Austin, Texas. Marble pillars, polished floors, men in suits pretending to listen. It wasn't my kind of place. But that day, I walked into the state legislature with one purpose: to rewrite the law. I wasn't a politician. I wasn't a lawyer. But I was a landowner, one who had been burned by a system built to protect the powerful and punish the honest. And I had a story that couldn't be ignored. I met with State Representative Ramirez, a woman known for standing up for small towns and rural communities. She'd seen the viral video, read the articles. Her first words to me were, "Is it true? You bought the whole HOA?" I handed her a thick folder: deeds, maps, legal filings, proof. They used fake annexation maps. They filed zoning changes without notifying landowners, and they did it all behind closed doors. She flipped through the folder in silence, then said quietly, "Let's make this law." Over the next 6 months, we drafted what would become the Legacy Landowner Protection Act. It included mandatory transparency for all HOA expansions, landowner consent before rezoning or annexation, severe penalties for fraudulent filings or deceptive property takeovers, and a clause I fought for personally, the coal provision, a guarantee that any property passed down through 3 or more generations could not be seized by a private entity without due process, public vote, and owner approval. It was the hardest thing I ever pushed through. HOA lobbyists fought back hard. They called me a rural extremist, a media stunt. But public support flooded in. Veterans, farmers, retirees, even suburban families who were tired of HOA tyranny. The day of the final vote, I stood in the gallery, cowboy hat in hand, heart pounding. And when the gavel slammed and the law passed unanimously, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Closure. Back on the ranch, life moved slower. The barn was rebuilt. The pasture was green again. Kids played where my grandfather once rode horses. A sign at the entrance read, "Cole Legacy Ranch Est, 1884, reclaimed 2025. Veterans moved into the east cabins. Local farmers grew crops on co-op land. We even started a small school free of charge for families who couldn't afford city life anymore. And the best part, no fines. No fear. One afternoon, I was sitting on the porch with my dog, sipping sweet tea, watching the sunset. A kid rode by on a bike. Waving as he passed, his mom called out, "Thank you, Mr. Cole." I smiled. This land. It finally felt like home again, but there was one last letter I had to write. And it wasn't to a lawyer or a senator. It was to my father. I sat down at my desk and wrote, "They took everything from us, Dad, but I took it back, not just for me, not for revenge, but for the family, for the legacy, for every man who ever lost what he loved to red tape and greed. I kept my promise. The land is ours again. And now it's going to stay that way, forever." I folded the letter and tucked it into the old Bible he left me. And then I went outside and got back to work.